Just going to make a quick video about strength and conditioning after the good feedback we got on the last video about winter motivation, and I'll try to sum it up quickly. Why do we need to do strength and conditioning as a triathlete? Like, we're not going into bodybuilding competitions or anything like that, but we just need to strengthen up the body for all the exercise we're doing, build up the core, keep the posture right, and injury prevention is huge with strength and conditioning. We have a thing called the posterior chain and anterior chain. Anterior chain is the whole front of the body, and any forward motion sport, you overdevelop the anterior chain. You have the posterior chain, which is behind you. You'll see it behind me. The traps, the triceps, the lats, the lower back, the glutes, the hamstrings, the calves. That's all posterior chain. So you'll really get sort of triathletes and footballers and any forward motion always getting injuries on the back of them. So they'll either get calf strains, hamstring strains, glutes, lower back. And that's because their sport is forward moving and they've overdeveloped the anterior chain, which is the front of them. So the likes of the biceps, the quads, the chest, everything's forward motion. There's a thing called eccentric and concentric. It means when one muscle is moving, there's a second muscle to help it. So bicep is usually the one that everyone uses the example of. When I shorten my bicep, my tricep is lengthening. When I lengthen my bicep, my tricep is shortening. So you don't only build the anterior chain because everything else is walking behind you. So if you don't do posterior chain exercises in strength and conditioning, you'll very rarely be able to work on strength and conditioning on the posterior chain. So while our quads is working when we're running, if these are overdeveloped and you're running, while the quad is lengthening and shortening, the hamstring isn't strong enough to keep up with it. So you need to be able to put some strength into the posterior chain all behind us. It doesn't have to be going to gyms and doing big, huge barbell, 20 each side and things like that. Not when you're only getting into strength and conditioning, because you're going to leave yourself in a jocker. So you need to be doing posterior chain exercises. It can be mainly with movement. Again, you can be doing deadlifts without a weight. Then you can add in dumbbells, you can add in plates, you can add in barbells. After this video, I'm going to send you a list of exercises, what we can work on in strength and conditioning, and what's mainly good for strengthening a triathlete's body. And the main thing will be posterior chain. As I said, we're a forward moving motion. We're running forward, we're cycling forward, we're even swimming forward. So while we're running and our quads are walking, our hamstrings are actually shortening and lengthening, as I explained with eccentric and concentric movements in the body. So as he says, you're not just building the anterior chain, which we do naturally. Our sport is forward moving, so the anterior chain is getting overdeveloped. And if we don't do strength and conditioning, that's where we're going to run into calf strains, hamstring strains, glutes, lower back, even triceps. So the first thing in a swimmer that goes on them is fatigued is their triceps. So when you swim in motion, you're using all biceps, you're stretching out the arm. If you're not building up them triceps, that's what gets fatigued, and then the sloppy motion. If you can think about leaning over in an aero position on a bike or even cycling, everything's that forward motion. We're pushing with our quads, we're pulling forward. If you're not doing posterior chain exercises, that's when you get up off the bike and your back is so weak, your glutes, your hamstrings, you haven't strengthened them up, and that's why down on the run it's going to affect you. So for me, the strength and conditioning for the triathlete is mainly posterior chain, and we all know about adding in core. Core is posterior, posture, posterior, everything while you're running forward. If you have a weak core, you're not going to be able to hold an aero position. You're not going to be standing up straight while you're running. You're not going to have a strong core while you're swimming, and your hips are going to dip. So core is everything. Core is life. Like, I'd tell anyone to do core even if they weren't doing triathlons. Just, you know yourself how core is vital in everyday living and just keeping your posture right. So we can touch base on exercises after this, but I just wanted you to understand why you do strength and conditioning and not just go to a gym and start lifting anything and look at the fella in the corner, what's he doing, I'll do it. We want to work on the likes of, as I said, the traps, the triceps, the lats, the lower back, the glutes, the hamstrings, the calves. This is all posterior chain, and it's going to build us up for when we're forward motion in triathlon. And when we can run, if our quads are developed, at least we know that our hamstrings are developed to a certain level that they can take what the quads are doing. So if you're pushing with the quads, the hamstring have a bit of strength to keep up with them, and then they don't get twinged. So again, I'd love feedback on this. After the video, I'm going to put up a list of exercises that we can do. And as he says, it can be with barbells, kettlebells, plates, or bodyweight. And you can give me feedback on this. Cheers.